All right, thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background report. We have with us in the studios a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria, NLB, who is Country Director, Action Aid, and more specifically, convener of the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room. NLB, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we also have with us for this conversation on ensuring violence-free campaigns from Port Harcourt. That's talking about Festus Oguche, legal practitioner. He is joining us from Port Harcourt. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, you're welcome.
Okay. Well, let me begin this because our topic is on how to ensure violence-free political campaigns 5 months before voting commences in February next year. But against the backdrop of our political history, and more particularly our electioneering campaigns, is it wishful thinking to assume that we can have violence-free political campaigns?
Well, I'm happy that the political party office, the chair is going to be here, to make some contributions because we need a lot of commitment from the political parties. It's surprising that election campaigns go violent because it's like the citizens don't realize that we are talking about applicants here for the office of the presidency. These are applicants. We need to come down and bring the language down to that level, that there is going to be a vacancy, come May 29, and that there are people, the Nigerians have declared that position vacant, and this is the time. This is going to be one of the longest campaigns. So we need to look at the political parties, their commitment. We are happy that the National Peace Commission, we are having the signing of a peace accord tomorrow. We hope that many of them will be around because many times when they call for meetings of political parties, the major political parties don't attend. That is APC, PDP. You hardly see their own chairmen to be at the level of, to come to meetings. And they're too big. If they're too big, then they are too big for the positions. They need to be able to show their face and commit themselves to the election period. So if we are also looking at the position where you have a huge unemployment. Our youth are being mismanaged, and being used. But I'm happy that after the primaries, when the young people of Nigeria saw that the volume of money that people are not only buying delegates, but they are now buying, they are buying candidates. Candidates are giving way, for the properties, and we heard of the kind of corruption that went on during the primaries. Nigerians, then there was an upsurge in terms of the continuous voter registration that INEC announced, and INEC could almost not cope with the registration processes. That is that the young people of Nigeria are awake. They have come alive to say, hey, we need to decide our future. Because these people, it doesn't look like they can decide our future. So I think it is very, very important that we are having a terrain of more informed people, more informed Nigerians, because the population of Nigeria, you have about 62.27% of Nigerians are young people. And these, in terms of the continuous voter registration, this is where we got the highest number of registrants. And so we have a system that is coming up. We need to look at the narratives. We need to change the narratives about young people in Nigeria. These are Nigerians. We, as the older Nigerians, are the ones that are breeding the younger Nigerians. And we need to take their future into consideration while you are deciding this job. They are coming out with manifestos. They are hardly guided by manifestos. And so I think it's going to be an issue-based election. We are happy that in the off-cycle election, some of the things that work with the peace accord, they are looking at themselves face in the face and also saying, I commit to this. How committed are they? How are they going to influence their followers? Because in most cases, they are the ones that move the young people to go into hate speech. And then they are not reacting to it, because it depends on what you do with your followers, that at the end of the day, people will come out. So I think we need to change the narratives. The young people are quite alive on the social media, and that's why we went on, we really went on calling on the government when they banned Twitter. Because Twitter, we need to also come out with a lot of civic education. We need to come out with engaging the populace. And I always look at National Orientation Agency, from that arm of going to the villages, going to the nooks and crannies of this country. If the government wants you to get messages, normally they go through that information sharing. A lot of it, of course, the NTA, the reach of the NTA, the radio and so on. So we need a lot of civic education, and we are hoping that changing of the narratives, that when the politicians are calling the young people out, they should tell the politicians to bring their children and let them be in the forefront. Let them come and join the campaign, because what is good for the people, the children living in poverty, is also good for the rich children, because many of the children are abroad. During this campaign, you won't find them. There is a lot of conflict. There is a lot of, all of this narrative. The vulnerability of the young people is so much. And then you have the issue of poverty in Nigeria. A lot of poverty. We have the cases of vote buying, which of course trended, in Anambra, in Ekiti, in Osun, and so on, and even in the FCT elections. So our hope is that we are going to watch out, but there is a lot of work that we saw through the off-cycle elections. The security, the police, we commend the police so far in all of the elections that have, taken place. The IGP himself committed. I saw that live in Osun. And we also saw even in Anambra election, where a lot of engagement with the civil society happened, and the media, happened, and the police came out clearly to tell us, you need to let us know when we are wrong. We also need to let us know when we are right, and we want to commend them. But we also want to say, you need to take all the security apparatus, like what we saw, a major meeting with the security apparatus in Osun happened, and we are saying, when we are going to a meeting like that, that is an off-cycle election. What's going to happen in the general election? We need to also organize those meetings on ground. Where they saw that there were some trouble spots, they were able to contain it. Osun was highly tense because so many trouble spots, but they were able to contain it, and it became a very peaceful one. Okay. So we hope for a peaceful campaign.
Okay, thank you so much, Eneobe. Festus Oguche, let's see your perspective. One would ask, why is NTA even discussing, ensuring violence-free campaigns against the backdrop of the fact that those involved are politicians of note? Politicians of note in the sense that they've been in public office for quite a while. The former vice president has been there bidding for this position for the 6th time now, I guess. And I think Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Kwankwaso, our former governors, including Obi, all these guys have gone through campaigns all through since 1999 and then to date. And we've also assumed that we rather would want to say that, of course, the political terrain in Nigeria, campaigns most especially, have not been that violent-free, and these guys have been at the center of it. Now, against the backdrop of the Electoral Act and some sections of it, what would you say will be done differently this time around? Do you think the expectation will be positive? Some things can be done futuristically?
Yes, I think there's a light in the tunnel in the area of campaigns and the extent to which they can be made violence-free. I would rather say that the consciousness of Nigerians have arisen for quite some time now. And you also stated, which I think I quite well acknowledge, that the bulk of them contesting for political positions currently are people who have been in governments, and they are well aware of the implications of campaigns and the nature of campaigns and what should campaigns entail in a democratic setting. The core issue that I think has not been taken care of is the fact that the issue of desperation is yet to be removed from our political character. And once that issue remains, then of course you'll expect that it will boil down to the campaigns as well, and to the support initiatives and those of them that will want to unleash themselves against society because maybe they have a support system over a candidate, and usually we have them there. And you seldom find the candidates trying to tell them to mellow down, or to avoid anything that will be confrontational, or avoid any form of violence. The Electoral Act, as I've seen, from Section 93, clearly spells out what an electoral campaign should look at. But then it behoves on INEC also to reel out some rules and regulations. I'm not sure if INEC has already done that yet. I'm not very sure if INEC has tried to reel out the rules and regulations by virtue of Section 93 or Section 94 of the Electoral Act. I'm not sure now, concerning the conduct of candidates and their supporters in the course of elections. I think we expect that, and we expect that to be quite comprehensive as much as possible. The issue of violence is one that has become almost a tradition in our democratic character, in our democratic sequence, beginning even as far back as the 1960s, and it has become one sore point in defining our level of tolerance, and not just level of tolerance, our ascription to democratic values and constitutional license. What is important is that the other speaker has clearly stated that these people are applicants. They are, because by campaigns they are bringing their ideas, they are bringing their mandates, they are bringing their decisions, what they think they can do, their capacity to the people, to convince them, you vote for me. Before you can do that very, very well, you must ensure that the elections will be free, fair, and credible, or else they may not even want to waste their time doing all that. I know very well that in some advanced countries, the campaigns are not just necessarily in rallies and campaign grounds. They go to homes, private homes, to convince people, to talk to families, to convince them to vote for them. That's where the system works very, very well. We've not had an electoral system that is devoid of irregularities and malfeasance. We are yet to get there, except maybe we are going to rely on the promises of INEC officials, particularly the INEC chairman. This time around, it's going to be a smooth sailing thing, that the people's vote will count. And when you don't have that type of scenario, of course, what do you expect? The political gladiators are just going in, to conduct campaigns, to meet the people as a matter of sequence and as a matter of procedure. Not that there's anything that they're going to get out of it. Whether the people support them or not, they are definitely going to find their way into political office. So when that mindset is there, you won't expect any correction, any amendment to that particular procedure or mechanism, to the effect that the average candidate will want to make amends, knowing that if he engages in anything that is anti-democratic, it will fall back on his chances of winning the election. That is how it is done in advanced countries. But when there's nothing concerning maybe the payback system, maybe some penal mechanism that can found some people, that can get some people who are found wanting for perpetrating violence during campaigns or even during elections proper, put behind bars. Once you have these things in place, then of course you can be properly assured that there's a guarantee that the campaigns will be free or devoid of violence. But incidentally, we don't have these things in place, and a lot of the violence that have been perpetrated through the years of our democratic experience had always been frustrated by, in cases where the authorities or maybe some individuals who want to seek the justice system to get some people to pay the price for what they have done. The issue of violence is also rooted in the organization by the political parties. The organization by political parties is quite an imperative in this wise to make for peaceful and properly conducted election campaigns. One of the prime issues that was very disturbing, that disturbed the entire country that time, in the last 2019 elections, was the level of deaths and killings in campaign grounds. In Port Harcourt here, there was this surge of the population, and a lot of people were trampled to death. A lot of people were died, and as a result of stampedes and all that. And these are things that come within the ambit of the political parties, side by side with the police authorities, to ensure that.
All right, Mr. Festus Oguche, thank you very much for the points that you have raised. We'll return to you shortly. And back to the Abuja studios, let's welcome a third guest who has just joined us. Engineer Yabagi Yusuf Sani is the National Chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. Engineer Yabagi, we're glad to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to ask you. I want to ask you the same question that I asked NLB a moment ago, and part of which Festus Oguche has also responded to in answering my colleague's question. Against the backdrop of what we know of our electioneering history, is it wishful thinking to assume that we can have violence-free political campaigns ahead of 2023? And if it is wishful thinking, what does it mean that we are up against?
Well, thank you very much. I want you to understand the fact that the political parties understand the implications of anything going wrong in the building of democracy, entrenchment of democracy in this country. If anything happens, like I always said, we, the political class, are the first casualties. We're the biggest losers, especially the political parties, because they are the ones that are easily, right away proscribed, and you're out of business as a political party. So to that extent, even for our own sake, we will ensure that the elections coming would be free, fair, credible, and all-inclusive elections. And I'm saying this against the background of the fact that you have an electoral law that has attempted to aggregate, all the experiences that we have had in terms of infractions during elections, like violence, vote buying, intimidation, and what have you. It has tried to capture everything and specify specific punishments that should be applied. And I think if you also extend it to even the government in power, there's one thing that is happening today. The president, that is the sitting president, is not going to be, contesting in this election. And he has given his word that he will leave a legacy of a credible, free, fair election, and ensure that he writes his name in gold. Also, if you look at it, the judiciary, have taken a lot of bashing for long. And I know the judiciary wants to cleanse whatever it is that has been ascribed, because they're the last, bashing of, citizen. I'm a citizen. So coming with this experience, I'm sure that from the political party's point of view, we cannot have it better than the environment. I'm talking about the mental commitment of the electoral umpire. I'm talking about INEC with the innovations brought, to bear in terms of the processes and the elections, conduct of elections itself. So I believe the people we have there, and also remember that even the national, the chairman of INEC too, has a debt with history, because perhaps this is his last outing, haven't served the second term, which is, I think he's the first one that has done it. So I think he has also, the responsibility, or rather, the hope, and commitment to, for his own sake, leave a legacy that not only himself but his children, will be proud to be identified with him, and that's what you live for. You want to leave a name that will be credible, that you can take to bank. So you see, with this scenario that we have, I'm guaranteeing Nigerians that 2023 election is going to be freest. It's going to be the fairest. It's going to be the one that will stand Nigeria out as a leader, which is what we are, not only in the continent of Africa but globally, because all the narratives that you have been having, don't bother yourself with what happened during the primary elections. Primary elections were purely conducted in a skewed manner. It's not something that the players I'm talking about, are effectively engaged. So, but here we are talking about history. We are talking about legacy. We are talking about what are you living for? What are you going to leave behind? So, we, the political party managers, that's talking about the like IPAC, for instance, we have committed, we have committed ourselves to the fact that this election must be the most credible one, and because where we are in Nigeria today, believe you me, it's not what anybody at all, wants us to experience. Economic retrogression. Is it the polity itself you want to look at, or is it the insecurity you want to look at, or is it even people now hating themselves? I mean, the 5 basic, requirement of the Maslow's, theory, is not there. You can't physiologically, you are not food safety is not there. You are not, you don't love each other anymore. You can't aspire. You are the self-esteem, of an average Nigerian is going down. So these are things that naturally, as a human being, as a citizen, you wouldn't want to continue with. So don't mind the fact that we are coming from a background of these dichotomies. I'm talking about these sentiments, of the religious background, ethnicity, and then the issue of the fact that we have so many people, becoming champions of certain sentiments that shouldn't be. So I know that as we go forward,
those sentiments, those situations that you just described,
yes,
not likely, therefore, to raise the stakes in the election. And again, from what we know of our political history and election history, First Republic, Second Republic, and even in the Instant Republic, shouldn't those ones actually be a warning signal that, look, the stakes are high, and in our circumstance, some persons will say anything goes. The power grab, however you can get it, your supporters who are out there seeking to intimidate other supporters, and so on and so forth, and that's how violence breaks out.
No, but there are people that have responsibility today, like I said, even to themselves, they owe it, a duty to ensure that they leave a legacy. Mr. President, for instance, cannot afford to fail on his last outing. Mahmoud Yakubu cannot afford to fail on his last outing either.
INEC doesn't instigate violence.
No.
The president, you agreed, is not contesting the next year's election.
They have the instruments of the law that they can apply. Yes. Mr. President can mobilize, the paraphernalia. I mean, the state, apparatus at his disposal to ensure that these things do not happen. They happen because, like the experience that NTA here was talking about, Anambra, Ekiti, Oshun, where those things happen, is because the authorities, the security agencies look the other way. But it's not going to be like that, because the international community is watching, the whole world is watching Nigeria, because Nigeria matters to the whole world. Okay. So the issue now is that, like I said, yes, people will have sense of entitlement, that, it's my face is our turn, my religion, my ethnicity is our turn. But Mr. President doesn't have a religion. Mr. President shouldn't have those sentiments. He cannot afford to have it. This time around, he cannot afford it. Because it's him that will stand out, and those people I've mentioned. The umpire also cannot afford to identify with anything that will tarnish his image.
I wanted to interject here.
Yeah, I'm saying that, and even the electoral law, the specters that you have mentioned, like the violence, that the buying, vote buying, there are specific, provisions in the Electoral Act 2020, like Section 120, 121, says that if anybody is caught before, during, after election, bribing, the voter, you go to jail for 12 months and you pay 500,000 naira. Okay, now National Assembly too have realized, that we need to have Electoral Offences Commission established. They are working on it, and I pray and hope that it will come to light. The Mr. President will give assent, and they will submit to him, give assent before the elections take place, so that it will not be like we used to have it before, that anything goes, like you said. It cannot be anything goes if you have the legal, framework.
Yeah, but Gisani, the laws are there really, and of course we thank God for the Electoral Act 2022. It spelled out all this, the sanctions are there. Just when we look at what, Oguchi just said, the implementation of these sections is very key, to the success of the campaigns and making it, violence free. But before we come back to you and even, let's, introduce or rather acknowledge, Hamzat Lawal, Executive Director. Can we have it, please? See around? Yeah, fine. Hamzat Lawal is there. He's speaking to us he will be speaking to us rather from Germany via Zoom. He is the Director Connected Development. And of course, let's just connect immediately. Therefore, we're talking about ensuring violence-free campaigns, and we've been trying to see how this very campaign that starts today and will last for the next 5 months will be different, really very much different from the ones we've been having in this country, given our history since 1960 or even before to now, where elections have not been that so free that issues are being raised and people happen to be victims of it. What's your perspective of this very idea of having a violence-free campaign that begins today? And how do you see this happening in the face of the fact that all the major actors have been campaigners, I must say, in the past elections, have been position holders during the past elections, and they're still looking for that?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think that we have an opportunity now to change the tags and flip the scripts. The perpetrators of this violence are not young people. They're politicians, they're politicians and mischief makers who think that they can only get their ways when they try to manipulate the system and the process by not investing in young people and mobilizing and organizing them, incentivizing them negatively, to engage in this violent process. But I'm optimistic that as we go into 2023, we'll focus on issues. And if you look at the conversation before now that officially, political parties can start campaign for the presidential poll. If you look at this conversation, both on the digital space and even in mainstream media, it has shifted. Now people are talking about issues that affect you and I. So people are now focused on, job creation, unemployment. How do we reduce unemployment? Healthcare, access to timely education, access to shelter. So now we're looking and we're asking leaders and people who say they want to lead us into prosperity. What would you do differently? What are your track records? So we've seen questions and conversation around issues. But I also think that this is also a test, not only to the independent electoral umpire, but to our security forces, and particularly the Nigerian police. I said the Nigerian police because they are the #1 law enforcement agency as constituted by the law. So if this is a test to them that, see, if we have a violent-free election, that means it's a pass mark for you. That means we have a cause to celebrate that we have a Nigerian police who not only will stand the test of time, but international community can come and learn from on how they ensured a violent-free election. So for me, the world is looking at Nigeria, but most importantly, civil society organizations like us are also documenting what these politicians would say, what their spokespersons would say, and what the political party would say. Because violence does not just erupt. There are indicators and indices that triggers violence. And some of these are inciting statements and hate speeches, misinformation, disinformation, and fake news. And for us, as electoral independent observers, we would be watching closely what political parties and politicians are saying and doing, and how this is affecting a free, fair, peaceful, and transparent election as we go into the polls in 2020.
Well, Hamzat, while still with you, I want to appreciate the points that you just raised, that once you shift the focus to issues that affect the electorate, then the tendency would arise for persons to be less concerned, for instance, about instigation to violence. But let's also be realistic. It turns out that our politics is almost that of a zero-sum game, and the level of desperation can be high. And the investment that we see in politics is akin to a business investment. And therefore, if you win, you win big. You lose big. And political actors, from what we know, have been, over the years, desperate to ensure that they win. And they normally would get young persons, not their own children, of course, to be on the front lines to perpetrate violence against their opponents. And in the campaigns, we're talking about political rallies. We have seen clashes in the past. We've seen processions where their processions have been disrupted. We've also seen political opponents and their supporters who have been attacked in their homes or elsewhere. How can we overcome all of this? I know that there is no quick fix, but in a situation where you have small arms and light weapons are plenty, how do we overcome this?
So I totally agree with you, because politicians and mischief makers see political process and this season as a season of investment. And, I'm really excited. See, I'm excited for two things. One, how INEC has now integrated technology into the process and the system. And two, how President Muhammadu Buhari is leaving a legacy by signing the 2022 Electoral Act into law and empowers INEC, to embrace technology and integrate technology, particularly around accreditation and electronic transmission of results. So, and if you look at the trends closely, that's why you see now politicians are becoming more desperate, and that's why we've seen another scourge around vote buying and vote selling, because votes actually count. You cannot manipulate the system and have much more voters, much more results than the actual voters in a polling unit. So that's why you see politicians now see this as an investment, mischief makers and bad politicians to induce voters and buy and sell and have that transaction. But I also think there's another opportunity here, because as the trend shifts, there are more opportunities for civil society, for the media, for law enforcement agencies, to also learn, but most importantly, take proactive steps. And as we go into 2023, the grassroots, the citizens, the electorates are now the determining forces. There's no first, second, third, or fourth force anywhere. The forces are the people. And that's why these politicians are now much more desperate and trying to do whatever they can to undermine, particularly first, the electoral umpire. And we will say, and we'll stand on our ground, that we would not allow anyone to interfere in the mandate and the role of INEC, because I'm excited about what INEC has done. One, they've managed perception and public trust, and they continue to galvanize and mobilize public trust around their work. And if you look at how they're proactive, it's really unprecedented. And we must continue on that trajectory. So for me, we're watching, those bad politicians and mischief makers, and we will not allow them to interfere with our democratic process. We've enjoyed democracy, we've embraced democracy. We must stay on this course.
Okay. Thank you so much, Hamzat Lawal. Earlier on you wanted to really, chip in here while Engineer Bagi was talking and making some references to how free, violence-free these elections will be, given what is right on the ground, especially the stance of INEC and, of course, the president's intention to bequeath to Nigeria a very smooth transition. But nonetheless, one would really want to add, in addition to what we really want to comment on in this regard, one would really want to, add or ask you, given the fact that the electoral law has sections that deal with this, and given the level of poverty in this country, the hunger in this country, and how vulnerable the voters have become, looking at just recent development during the primaries. And indeed, the main problem, which is the issue of impunity. Do you think this very act and what it contains can really weld some stick in front of the politicians and take them away from their usual practice of hiring thugs, buying votes, buying the voters in whatever form through some petty, provisions and things like that? Although the voters are awakened now, but that would not give a guarantee that that is sure.
I think one of the things that I wanted to comment on is I've been on several meetings, with Engineer Yabagi, where they call all the political parties, the major political parties, like I said earlier. Do you see APC in the meeting? Do you see PDP in the meeting? The chairman, the chairman, do they come to meetings? And these are the people that we want to see the commitment from. I really, again, congratulate the president for signing that bill into law, the Electoral Act 2022, because even the politicians almost made it impossible for him to sign that law. And so there's an environment that we have to look at. The environment where you have the conflicts around the country. We have the banditry, which Kingsley alluded to earlier. We have banditry. We have the unknown gunmen. We have series of crises where the government of the day, the president he did well on this side, but on the other side, in terms of security, has he done well? We are politicizing the issue of security. The Nigerian army is one of the best in the world, from what we used to know, that they go to open corridors for big powers, where they are engaged in international, peacekeeping. And now we are here, even with the Nigerian police. I think what Hamza is saying is, if we are going on with the way we have gone from Anambra had tension packed, but election was conducted. If, the way INEC behaved in Anambra, because in the morning of the election, about 1,500, ad hoc staff withdrew because their parents pressurized them that the election in Anambra is not worth their blood. They found a way, and they still held an election. So election will hold. But what is the environment? Critical analysis. Yesterday with Claim Foundation, which is a member of the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, they've done baseline survey. There's a lot of frightening things on the ground. But the frightening things on the ground, they talked about the unknown gunmen, they talked about the banditry. There's some territories in this country that bandits have taken over. Or is it Boko Haram, or is it, different conflict environment. So the issue of the availability of the small arms is another major one that we're looking at. And so what are we doing about them? Yes, the police is the lead agency in terms of elections, in territory, in the internal, environment. But we saw their collaboration in Ihiala at the by-election in Anambra, where some of the ad hoc staff were kidnapped, but the army went and rescued them. And so we want to see more collaboration from all the agencies to see what they can do in this election. So I think we need to look at the analysis on ground. You talked about poverty. Nigerians need to understand that poverty has no language. Hunger has no language. And so we have about 100 million Nigerians milling around. Some of them are going to bed hungry every night. Who has led to the poverty that is on the ground now? There are so many governors that are not paying salaries. For 8 months, they are not paying salaries. So we need to look at the undertone of the environment that are being created, that Nigerians are being stranded or strangulated up to the point to say, you must vote. I think why the desperation in this election is on is that vote will now count. Vote now counts. Gone are the days for ballot snatching. If you snatch even the beavers, it will be useless to you. Where are you going to take it to? You can't take beavers from one electoral or one polling unit to use it in the next one. And now, and INEC is really moved on, because before 10 p.m. in Osun, for example, all the results were already in the INEC portal. IREV is there to serve. And so I think the electoral the electoral law has empowered INEC a lot, but we still also have to look at the citizens, even in INEC. We are happy with the progress that the INEC chairman has made. Like you said, like Engineer Yabagi said, he has a lot in stake. But we need to come back to the political parties. Tomorrow there will be signing of the peace accord. Are they available to sign that peace accord? Are they committed to the peace accord? Are they committed to degenerate or violating young people, by asking them to take arms? Or are the politicians, are they releasing more arms? Because this is one of the things they did in the election in 2019, release arms to the thugs, and at the end of the day, they are not able to take that. So we need to look at the environment. But I call on all Nigerians, all the young people, stand upright for Nigeria. Your future is at stake, and these are your applicants. You need to look at them as applicants.
Yes, okay. Really, before, just a minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
You didn't address the issue of impunity in this regard.
Impunity is another one. I don't know what is happening in this country. Okay, like we had some arrests in Ekiti. Up till this moment, we have not seen, where have they taken them to? We had some arrests in Osun. We have not seen, but there is a conflict in the law. If you look at the Electoral Act, which talks about INEC has to be the one that we actually prosecute, that the police can arrest, but it depends on the agreement. They have to look at, the perimeter of the environment, 300 meters radius, within that, if something is committed, INEC can prosecute. But outside that, they cannot. So there is still a bit of confusion. The law itself, they were calling on the Nigerian Bar Association. Some of you here are members, to talk to your members, because it is time for us to look at the judges. So we are not only focusing, and civil society will not focus only on INEC. They will focus on the judges, because you're having even some senators that never were part of an election, and now court is giving them the right to go and contest. Where do you see that happening? We have some cases right now that they were not involved. They say somebody is stepping down. How does somebody step down for you? What does the law say? But the law is the one that is twisting. So we are going to watch all the segments of the society, and we give them their red card. And I call on everyone that the labors of our heroes past, we say, should not be in vain. Your ancestors have left this place for you. What are you investing? ASU is still on strike. Our children are suffering. Which way do we go in Nigeria? But we have to be hopeful.
All right. Thank you very much, NAD, that clincher. Sorry, NAD is another civil society, another civil society activist. Yes. Sometimes I conflict the names, but the faces are quite distinct. NLB, of course, is the convener, Nigeria's Civil Society Situation Room. Thank you very much, as I said, for that clincher, that we have to be hopeful. And part of the hope also has to do with the improvement in the security situation. In recent weeks, we have seen increased activities by the security agencies, which have also yielded tremendous benefits. Boko Haram not as active as they used to be in a number of the territories that they claimed that they were in charge of, say, the northeast. We've also seen the bandits who've been, of course, neutralized. The Abuja-Kaduna Highway, one of the major dangerous arterial roads, is increasingly passable right now. So the security agencies are working on that. The unknown gunmen, some of them are also being put to sleep, and so on and so forth. We're going to take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
NTA. We've been trying our best to contain the situation, and in our operations, we've been able to make a lot of recoveries. We've been able to also add aspects that are involved in this kind of activities, and we've been able to also recover particularly arms and ammunition from those who are carrying it unlawfully and disturbing the peace of the people. But generally, our morale in the Nigerian police is always guided by our commitment to do what we have sworn to do. Peace and security must be looked into as a priority by all. To look at security as the business of all of us.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS.
The counsel of our fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youth, let's build our nation together.
All right. Of course, thank you so much for staying tuned to this program. We're discussing ensuring violence-free campaigns here. And then we have our guests. They've been around talking about NOB, Country Director Action Aid, and of course, convener Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room. And then we also have Yabagi Yusuf Sani, National Chairman, Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC. Our, guest from Germany has disappeared for a while, but I hope he's going to come back and speak about Hamza Lawal. We also have in Port Harcourt, really, Festus Obuche, a legal practitioner. Festus, let me come back to you now. Let me just start. Let's start this segment with you. I really want you to look at this issue of impunity so much. You raised the issue from the beginning. You earlier said the implementation of sections of the Electoral Act is very, very key in ensuring, violence-free campaigns this time around. And thank God the Electoral Act is in place. The sanctions are there, the penalties are there, and all the offenses have been listed. But unfortunately, one may say, I don't know. The highest of the levies or fines for offenses there is about 2 million naira, and the list is 500. Imagine a situation where somebody really spent or invested over 100 million naira in this regard, trying to get to where we are at the moment. And then whatever he does, go beyond 2 million naira or so. I mean, what would you say about the potency of this act in relation to trying to see to it that actors abide by the law because of its potency?
Yes, that's a very good question. I'll first of all start by saying that you cannot exclude the primaries from the actual conduct of elections. The elections proper, they are just one and the same thing. And the primaries could be a precursor to what we expect during the elections proper. The issue of impunity is one that has become marked as part of our democratic traditions, not just in this republic alone, and the several other republics that have been. And it has become the bane of our electoral fortunes. Incidentally, not much effort is being put into ensuring that this type of traditional character is nipped the bud or stopped completely. I'm very sure that the harbingers or perpetrators of violence during elections and campaigns are walking the landscape, the political landscape, like Colossus all the time, and they are waiting because that's a very good way of making money. It has also to do with the level of engagement of our youths and maybe the level of unemployment and the total lack of commitment by the government of the day to create jobs, a series of governments, not just this one alone, create jobs and engage the youths appropriately. The Electoral Act has spelled out these areas of crime and defining them appropriately in a manner that some persons find very satisfying. I think they are very much satisfying as well. There are terms of imprisonment that are attached to these fines, and in some of them, and you talked about the potency. Well, the efficacy lies at the fact that it is a criminal code embodied in a civil code. We are advancing or making case for the making of an Electoral Offences Act, a specific act for the purposes of prosecuting, arresting, prosecuting individuals that perpetrate electoral crimes, which also includes violence. And this has not been done. The gentleman there in the studio also talked about the creation of an Electoral Offences Commission. And that is part of our expectation. And there's nothing yet in the process that's been done in that direction. And I think when you have an Electoral Offences Commission coupled with the Electoral Offences Act, you can have a better management of these crises, these impunities that occur during elections. These are very, very important. And aside from that, I think there's nothing much on ground regarding the level of participation of the security authorities, save for the police and the National Security and Defense Corps that was mentioned in the Electoral Act. But you know that in 2019, the military was all over the place in Rivers State here, where I live, and they were almost taking over the entire process in a manner that I think is quite totally and completely unacceptable. Some of us went to court to obtain several judgments of the court. There's a judgment of the Court of Appeal forbidding the military from participating in any manner in the conduct of elections. They have their responsibilities for external aggression and for internal insurrection, and that is where it stops. There are a whole lot of other issues. But I will say that if you look at the totality of the elections we've had so far, and the very high level of violations of rights and impunities that are occurred, and check it side by side with the fact that nobody is serving any sentence for any electoral offense, it tells you that there's more to it than meets the ground, that it meets the ordinary eyes. And we have not been able to grapple the situation as it is. Somebody mentioned the judiciary. I think it's the madam there in the studio. And I think it's very, very important. And it's not just important, but electoral offenses tends to be looked at as a miniature offense that shouldn't attract anything. Of course, at the end of the day, they have their gentlemen as governors, as members of the National Assembly, presidents, and very powerful people. So even if there's a case in court against them, a charge against them, they always get away with it. And that's why you cannot see a single person who's serving any sentence anywhere, in any prison, in any correctional center in this country on an electoral offense. They always get away with it, and this has all tended to multiply these incidences, these impunities, these violences, that you would not correctly say that that aspect of our electoral value, that negative aspect of our electoral tradition will be completely off in the 2023 elections. That's my submission.
Okay. Mr. Festus Oguche, thank you very much for your submission. There are a number of strands to take from that, and I want to bring the issue back to our two guests here in the studios, Engineer Yabagi and NLB. I am not of the school of thought that believes that the creation of an Electoral Offences Commission will, on its own, help solve some of the criminal activities around elections in this country. There are extant laws that we have. And since we're talking about violence-free campaigns, and some of the examples of violence that we see during electioneering, willful destruction of property is an offense under the criminal code. It's an offense under the penal code. Arson is an offense under the penal code. It's an offense under the criminal code. Penal code being applicable in the north and criminal code of the various states being applicable in the south. Murder, which is the highest, it's a capital offense. In the penal code, it's an offense also in the criminal code in the south. And we then ask ourselves, as Festus Oguche rightly observed, how many persons today can we identify as having served judicial sanctions on account of these offenses that were committed in previous election cycles, including the latest of Ekiti, Osun, and Anambra, which are off-cycle elections. And the point is, from what we know, there is high political interference in law enforcement in this country, particularly regarding elections. And the assumption that, as we say in law, election litigation is sui generis. So there's also a presumption that offenses that are committed in the course of electioneering are also sui generis, that they are electoral offenses. But I've said, murder is murder. It's whether during election or not during election. Willful destruction of property, disorderly conduct in a breach of the peace is an offense. I don't know whether you're getting my point. But it turns out that political heavyweights, one, because of their desperation, they will have to maintain their own militia and say, these are our boys. So those boys go out and commit acts of impunity, and then they get away with it. Even when the law enforcement officers will say, let's rein them in, we hear. From time to time, they say, look, they get a slap on the wrist, release those boys. These are politicians. And that's why when you say that you are hopeful that this time around, 2023, yes, everybody wants to leave a legacy, it's fine. Political candidates, party candidates, they are all willing. But when we have a totality of all of this in view, how can the political class discipline itself from maintaining militias and then having their boys run riot all over the country, causing havoc and mayhem?
Yeah, thank you, Tinsley. I believe that every Nigerian today, without an exception, is traumatized. And why are we traumatized? It's because of the failure of leadership. How do you get leadership? Through elections. So, and you can see the commitment, the passion that the heads of the security agencies, from the IGP, to DSS director, to EFCC, to what have you, are coming out to say that it's not going to be business as usual. And they're not saying it because they like it, because whether or not they like it, there are also casualties. We are losing, these security agencies to banditry, to attacks by Boko Haram and what have you. So it is, like I said, this 2023 is for political parties for our own sake, the security agencies for their own sake. They must make sure that we get it right. Because today they can't sleep with their even two eyes open, not one eye closed, something like that. So the issue is that all of us are paying the price. And we know the only way we can turn things around, for this country and for us to feel safe and be able to have a country we can call our own, which is Nigeria, is when we ensure that this election, becomes a success. Without it, forget it. We can't get anything right. So this is why I said I have that confidence, and I believe it's going to happen. Because when you look at, don't take the primaries. Primaries, to me, yes, somebody says a precursor of what will happen. No. Primaries are about politicians, who have their own different ways of doing things. And when we do primaries, that is not the the larger society that is involved, and they don't, the majority of Nigerians, especially the youth, the 70% of the electoral, the voting community today, has seen the futility of going on with what has been happening, because they can see how they themselves have been reduced, in value, even value of life, and even in wealth and things like that. How droves of them, are leaving the shores of this country. I mean, going to other places. People that you have trained with hard-earned resources, doctors, engineers, teachers, brain drain. If there's any other word to use, I think this is Nigeria. Nigeria is the brain drain center, or the center of brain drain, like we are the poverty center of the world.
I'm sorry,
the issue is
the question is,
these are all.
How do the members of the political class cure themselves of the frequent interference with law enforcement with regard to offenses committed because of electioneering?
We're all involved. The media too.
We're not NTA sponsoring violence. Is that what you are suggesting?
No, the media. I've seen the narratives, the trend we are seeing today. There is entrepreneurial interferences. In what is coming out from the media. There's also journalistic bias. We have seen that. We have seen how people are trying to manipulate the space, in one direction. And that, what you have, end of the day, is crisis. Because you are going against the grain.
Yeah,
and the media, and in India, with those awesome power that you have, it is not commensurable with the responsibility that you must display in order to ensure that this election, we get it right also. So, and I haven't seen anything in the electoral law that talks about how the media should be cowed. I mean, should be to behave in a way that they will say things the way they are, not the way they want Nigerians to believe.
Yeah, but you two wrongs do not make a right here in this case. But the fact is that
don't make the political parties your whipping point.
No, not really. I don't think that is his intention. Really, that's not his intention. His intention is just to point to the fact that really politicians are at the center of this, and of course, whatever it is,
there's a question there that is it even right, for the mass media to be involved in politics?
That's another topic entirely.
Is it right or wrong that the mass media should be involved in politics? Because some of the narratives you hear from the media, it's not what depicts the facts. What is happening in the country, and then all these sentiments are also transferred to how you echo things, what you tell us, how you manage the information. Set the agenda, yes, but set the agenda for Nigeria, not for ethnic reasons or religious reasons or other sentiments.
Engineer Yabagi, thanks. The agenda we are setting here is on how to ensure violence-free political campaigns ahead of voting in 2023. We have 5 months ahead of us for political campaigns. And what we are saying is that our experience teaches us that these are things that happen. And that's why we're interrogating them and saying how we can cure or treat some of these things. And one of the issues on the table now, which I would like NLB to also address, is how do we deal with this frequent political interference in law enforcement? Because the politicians and their candidates, they have their militia, they have their boys. And then these boys feel protected, and then they go all out with the acts of impunity, and nobody gets ultimately punished by the law. Whether Electoral Offences Commission is available or not, we have criminal code is available. Penal code is available. Get out if somebody is apprehended for an offense, draft the appropriate charge, and then let him face the law.
And really, as a right to that, these thugs at the end of the election campaign, at the end of elections generally, when these politicians assume office, sometimes they were neglected. And you can see the fallout of that, becoming bandits, becoming this and that, and become users to the society.
You said neglected, they are discarded.
Yeah. I think that's the point where we are looking at. What is the solution to all of this?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Why are they treated? These people that are being discarded are not the children of the politicians. And I want to react to some of the things that you said. Living right has no territory. The smallest unit of governance is a family. What that means is that the political parties, primaries is not just a political party business. It's a business of Nigerians. Those delegates are Nigerians, and living right inside the political parties, inside the activities of the political parties, will transcend to how you bring it out, to the elections. So what we are calling for is that wherever you are, you must live right. You must stand up right. Because if you stand in the family and you behave badly, your children will copy it. And that's how they come into the society. You know, rights violations that we're talking about. We had an incident, last week. And that is where an inspector of the police was assigned to a professor that doesn't really have a name, because I don't see her publications anywhere. The way that we don't have enough law enforcement agents on ground, but they are allocating them to the politicians. The politicians are even being protected. In discussion with some of the the security agents, they said two big problems they have: the government and the politicians. That the Nigerians are not the problems, because they go to sort of stimulate, recruit, or bring them because they are taking advantage of their poor state. So what are we talking about? I think going into this election, the other day we had a press conference to commend the IGP for arresting the professor for what they meted to that young woman. But we also have to do the narratives. How many people, these are taxpayers' money that we use for the payment of the police force, staff. So who are you assigning the police to? These are children of human beings. And then you starve them, you do a lot of things to them, they do some menial things, they do the things that they shouldn't do. We have seen some, videos of the police who are guiding the orderlies going to snatch something because their principals tell them to go and snatch ballot boxes and all of that in the past. How do we go? Respect for dignity. Who protects the protector? We need to be able to look at that. And so when we are talking of the election, the politicians, the IGP has his commitment, total commitment to the election that is coming. He was involved. They have just finished the training of election management, security training, which I was also involved. But the complaint of the security agencies is the politicians themselves. How do we go forward? Let's commit them. Let them sign the accord and let us move forward. So in 2 days, we are going to be 62. Nigeria is going to be 62. How do we move forward? The civil society organizations are involved to make a difference, and we are covering we are making our contributions, but we are not government. The government of President Muhammadu Buhari in this election will be put to test because of the way they are reacting to security, the way they are acting. Even in Katsina itself, you cannot go now because of issues of insecurity. Has the president or the political class in this dispensation done well? Before we become a failure of a generation, we need to improve. We believe, and INEC has created a trust, but we'll be watching them, we'll be monitoring them, but we'll be engaging and also making sure that we're able to make our contribution. So we are ready to go into the election. Thank you for organizing this. Bring MBA into Good Morning Nigeria, and also the judges into Good Morning Nigeria. Let them come and because this is your contribution. Okay. The media is doing a great job. Don't tell them they cannot be involved involved in campaigns or elections.
Thank you so much. This very topic is going to be an ongoing one, I think. Yesterday we keep talking about that because the campaigns have just started and so many issues have come up. So we are going to just keep looking at them as they unfold and many more developments as they come around. And of course, we must really thank you, NLB, Country Director, ActionAid, and of course, convener, Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room, for being part of this discussion this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Engineer Bagisani, we don't now thank you much more because you've been part of this discussion always. Whenever need arises, you come down. The only thing is that you always want to point fingers at us as if we are culprits in one way or the other. But nonetheless, that's just part of it. It's still part of the game. We're going to look forward to seeing much more of you in such a discussion.
Let me my impression that
in 30 seconds,
yes, in 30 seconds,
yeah,
but big parties don't participate in. IPAC is the council that represents big parties. Wherever you see IPAC council members, the parties are there. We are always talking to each other. Okay. Believe you me.
All right, thank you so much. And a very big thank you also to Festus Oguchebe, who spoke to us from Port Harcourt. He's a legal practitioner, of course, constitutional lawyer. Thank you so very much. Let's now take a bit of sports before we round up.
The Desert Foxes of Algeria continue their